James Nichol. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. We didn't realise your commute. Do apologise.
2.5 hour drive to come on an amateur podcast. But
it's good, man. It's good. I know it'll be worth it.
We appreciate it.
I'm used to that drive down to Portsmouth anyway, so it's just a little detour from what I'm used to.
You used to train at Gym 01, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, really good gym, high level.
Yeah. We know the guys there. Obviously, we sponsored Shock and Awe on the last. Was it the last one I did?
Yeah.
Corona's messed me up so much because there's been no event, so I can't think.
We're Vaccination Nation now. Yeah.
And then I'm meant to be commentating on the next Shock and Awe alongside Colin and their team there, so that'll be good as well. But yeah, we got a lot of respect for the guys over there. Who was your training partners there then? Mainly like Elliot and people like that?
Elliot, Michael, like Sam Green, Jay Barker.
Yeah.
I've guys down there.
So do they all get free nutritional advice? They've
been awesome actually. I've had loads of people from there like get in touch for like working with me. So yeah, it's been a good relationship to have.
Good. So while we're on the subject of that, let's talk about firstly your origins. What got you into martial arts first? We'll come into the nutrition side of it, but what got you into? Because I know you're a heavy Muay Thai practitioner. Yeah. So what started your interest in that?
So, funnily enough, it's not like most people's traditional sort of entry to martial arts. I was never really into it as a kid. Okay. Didn't really watch like the martial arts movies or anything. Basically, just when I was in school, I was about 15, my mate heard about it, wanted to go down, give it a go, and basically just didn't want to go on his own. So he's like, "Oh, will you come with me?" It's like, yeah.
Does he still train or not?
Nah.
Standard.
He did. Yeah, he did about a couple of weeks of it, and I've basically trained ever since. So. I got him to thank for that, but
so it wasn't the traditional. Because a lot of people that, especially they get into Muay Thai or some form of kickboxing, it's from like it's from 80s movies. So people are like Jean-Claude Van Damme fans. They watch kickboxing and want it to be Tong Po instead of Van Damme.
I knew it was going to be a Tong Po. Tong Po.
2 minutes in and we've mentioned Tong Po.
Yeah, but it had to be, didn't it? Yeah. But it sounds silly, but back in the 80s and 90s, that's what. People didn't really know much about Thai boxing or Laf Wei or anything like that. So it was like those sort of films that highlighted it, really.
Yeah, it's funny. Like a lot of people, like especially like you said in Muay Thai, have got into it through those things like that. But for me, it's like
shout out to the muscles from Brussels.
Mate, that is why I liked martial arts. That's why I liked combat sports. That's why I started watching boxing and everything. It's because when I was a kid, my uncle used to put Van Damme movies on. So I was sat there watching like Bloodsport and The Quest at 6 years old.
Quest.
But you know what I mean? And then it was like all of a sudden I was like, well, this is normal. This is what I want to do. So
you weren't into Jean-Claude, you got into kickboxing.
For me, it's just, I don't know, I think I'd never like really been into any sports, like not really into football or anything like that. Yeah. And I think that was just like, but I'd always been like super competitive as well.
Yeah.
And I think for me that was just like a good outlet.
Yeah.
A good, just like something I could commit like to 100%, something I enjoy, and release a bit of stress, release a bit of.
So how old were you when you first started training?
15.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's still pretty early, isn't it, to be doing it at 15 years old? Yeah. And was that Muay Thai specific? Was that a local club?
Yeah. So it's at the same Muay Thai gym that I'm with now. So
you've been there the whole time?
Been there the whole time, yeah.
That's cool.
What's the name of the gym? Let's give them a shout out.
It's a combat gym.
Yeah.
Based in St Albans.
Okay, cool. And so you've been doing it, like you said, around 9 years.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, so I'm 24 now, so yeah.
So at 15, were you still competing against similar age group, or what's the adult category?
So I didn't actually start competing until I went down to Gym 01.
Oh, okay.
So when I first started a combat gym, so it was called St Albans Muay Thai back then, it was like 3 nights a week, like hosted in a boxing club, so it was like sort of part-time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did that as much as I could, enjoyed that, but it wasn't until I actually went down to uni, and like, sure you know that the guys at Gym 01, they got a good setup there, lots of fight opportunities, stuff like that. So that was the first time I fought and actually got like a sense of real competition.
Yeah.
And so it was I don't know how old I would have been, maybe 18 or 19 when I actually first started fighting.
And was that on a show, or was that like an inter-club level to start?
It was. I'd done a few inter-clubs with, just down Wetherspoons.
Guildhall Wall.
Plenty of fights there.
Yeah.
I'd done a few inter-clubs just like over the years, like with my home gym and with Gym 01 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an amateur show that they put on. I think that was in my second year of uni, so that was the point. Where
Is that the one that used to be at the school? Was it at St Mary?
It was.
What's the school down in Pompey?
I'm trying to remember the name of the place. It was like a sports hall.
Yeah, and it was just a ring in the middle of the sports hall. Yeah, I used to go and watch them.
Yeah.
I've probably seen you fight, but not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to go to all of those, all the interclubs, because I think a few of the Gym 01 guys used to come to the Carters interclubs as well, because I used to fight kickboxing on those. But yeah, I used to go to them, I'm sure the name of the school's like St Mary's or something like that.
Yeah, that does ring a bell.
It's literally in the middle of Portsmouth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, not far from Guildhall Walk, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So you can have a fight in Guildhall, then go to an interclub, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So when you were at Portsmouth Uni and you were trained at Gym 01, were you doing nutrition at Portsmouth University, or what were you studying?
I studied psychology, actually, so that's what my degree is in.
Okay.
And that...
You'd have a field day with me.
But it was uni when I started getting into nutrition, because it sort of ties in with everything. So, like, having the opportunity to fight and stuff, obviously, you've got to be, like, dialed in with your nutrition, got to, be the right weight and then cut weight at the end. And I'd never been, like, a skinny guy. I'd never been, like, fat, but I'd always been, like, I suppose just like a little bit bigger than I'd like to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, no matter what I tried as well, like, nothing was seeming to work. And it was that point, when I had to start competing, that it was like, right, you can't just keep messing around. You've actually got to get.
Can't just dip your toe in the water anymore.
Exactly. So I tried pretty much every like bullshit fad at uni, like low carb, keto, even like did like bulletproof coffee.
What was the one that went around ages ago? It was like a shake. You just have like 3 shakes a day, just blend everything in.
It's like a fucking grey label, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know what you're on about, yeah.
It was some Australian fella started.
Is
that as well, yeah.
So yeah, pretty much like tried everything and just couldn't. I could always lose a bit of weight, and then I put it back on.
So it was unsustainable.
Yeah, and that was the point where I was like, I need to, and I'd always been interested in it. Like, I love food as well, so yeah, definitely helps. So yeah, I suppose it was just after a lot of experimentation and sort of starting to educate myself, I started to know what worked and what worked for me, and then find a bit more of a sustainable approach and be able to sort of sort what is like worth listening to versus like what is just like bro science, basically.
So was there a point with the psychology where you were like, I'm enjoying this, but the nutrition I'm enjoying more, and you just sort of finished that, parked it, or do you still keep your eye on both?
I'm definitely still super interested in psychology, and obviously like working with people,
that helps
with
with
my clients.
Yeah,
massively helps as well, because it's like I always say, like, broadly speaking, people know fruits and vegetables are healthy, and like people want to lose weight as well. So
what?
Not this one's dropping here on the podcast. But it's the actual behaviour, isn't it? It's the behaviour change, the habits, and actually putting it into action that people struggle with. So psychology has such a big impact on it. And I suppose the turning point from psychology to nutrition was sort of towards the end of my degree, where I was starting to think about jobs and think about what I want to pursue as a career, and that was at the point where I was like really into Muay Thai.
So it wasn't having people on the Shay Lounge tell us about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. With psychology, there's just so much further study involved. If I was looking at becoming a sports psychologist, so it would be, I'd be like almost 30, by the time I finished my further study.
So that's what, masters, then PhD,
yeah, masters,
then
PhD, supervised study. Yeah, man, it was like. I was like, I love psychology, but I'm just not willing to commit that many years of my life. And I was at that point, I was ready to make my own money and start to have a career. So that was the point where I suppose it was like an impact of a few of those things. That I started fighting, got really interested in nutrition, starting to educate myself on it, and just the fact that psychology wasn't really a reliable career path. That I started to look into like nutrition courses and how I could educate myself.
I'd imagine it's quite sort of, once you're in with a certain team or company, they don't want to then lose you or bring other people in, because otherwise you're just taking the tricks you taught them to other. I imagine it's quite insular. So
yeah, definitely.
But it's good that you had that basis, so to speak, that foundation of psychology, and you can then apply that to your profession now.
Yeah, massively. I use it every day as well.
I did music technology.
Okay.
So
and look at the setup.
It means nothing. I wasted 2 years, so full on. So at least you've done something, like you say, that you can apply later in life.
I use it every day as well, and I think it's like an interesting, I suppose, like extra thing to have, like actually knowing how you can help people put it into action as well. Because like if you're not really a coach if you just say, right, do this, follow the plan, go on, off you go.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to actually coach them through it and help people, and be emotionally intelligent and able to sort of like work with them as a person. Like, we're not robots. So
what's your favourite thing about working with fighters specifically?
I think just because there's a certain personality type that you have with fighters. Tend to be like committed, dedicated, competitive, yeah. Yeah, binge eating. But I feel like we just share that same passion. It makes it easier to identify with people, and I think in terms of fighters working with me, the fact that I'm also a fighter, I think is a bit of an accolade. People know that I've experienced what they've experienced. It's not like you've got some like doctor or uni professor or something telling you what to do, but they've not actually been in the trenches.
It's true though, isn't it? I mean, especially we sort of spoke about it on, I think it was episode 2 where we spoke about our origins, and I was severely obese, and whenever you'd go to the doctors, you'd have a fat GP telling you that you need to lose weight, and automatically you're like, are you joking me? Like, you're 3 times the size I am, and you're telling me to lose
fat
weight.
GP needs to be a sitcom.
But it's true, isn't it? Like, whenever you go and see like a health professional, 9 times out of 10, they're not healthy themselves, and they give you bullshit advice on BMI and things of that nature without actually getting to the root cause and, like you say, the psychology side of it, where it's like, why have you got these unhealthy eating habits? Why are you this severely overweight, and why can't you do anything about it? Whereas yourself, and I always look at like a PT. Whenever I'm at the gym, we've got like PTs around the village, and it's like they're offering people one-to-one sessions, and I'm thinking, I'm in better shape than you are. Why do I need to pay you? You have to be like a product of your own, of what you're doing.
Your own case study.
Precisely. So I think as a fighter, that's what would attract me to use someone like you as your nutritionist, because you know what you're talking about. Like the proof's in the pudding, so to speak.
Yeah.
I work with a PT, Aaron Davies, that we spoke about a couple of times. And the reason I went to Aaron Davies is because he grapples. He's built like a brick shithouse, so to speak. So when you look at him, it's like, well, yeah, that's how I'd like to look to a certain extent. That's how I'd like to perform. Plus, he does jiu-jitsu, so he knows the nutrition, the things that I need to apply to what I'm doing every day. It's not some random guy who's been on bodybuilding.com and has read a few nutrition plans and says, here's some broccoli, here's some rice, here's some... Do you know what I mean? Just stick to that, it's fine.
Did like a 1-year course at college sort of thing. And I think they're going to coach the Olympics. Yeah. I
mean, the other thing about you is obviously you're MNU certified, which is sort of like the gold standard in nutrition nowadays, especially in the UK. Whenever someone looks up a nutritionist, if they've got that stamp next to their name, that's a pretty big thing.
Yeah,
so
massively.
What made you want to take on that course other than the fact it was so well thought of, I suppose?
So it wasn't actually the first course I did. So pretty much straight out of uni, I did Precision Nutrition Level 1. Yeah. Don't know if you guys have heard of them. They're based in America, and that was good. It was like another online course. It was good, but at the end of it, I just didn't feel like knowledgeable enough to really like coach the top level. I didn't feel like I felt like I could help people lose weight and stuff like that. But actually, for me, wanting to work with fighters and like optimize things as much as possible, I just didn't feel like I'd almost broke that ceiling to get to that real top level type thing. So after that, I felt like I could give some basic advice, but I just didn't feel
to get to the nitty-gritty, the science.
Yeah, exactly. So that was very much like a habit-based thing, and it was good, and it was valuable. But after that was when I decided to do MNU, because that was like you said, the gold standard. And initially, it was like I was sort of comparing the two, and obviously MNU's quite pricey, so I was like, right, I'll go for this one. But in the end, the investment was massively worth it, and actually, what sort of persuaded me into doing MNU was that I went to one of their weight making workshops. So they host these workshops like for anyone can come as well.
In London and
stuff and so I went up to one of their, and this was after doing Precision Nutrition, before doing MNU. I just thought, right, this is perfect for me. Weight making workshop is exactly the sort of people I want to work with. It's the area I want to be a specialist in. And I just remember like talking to the other guys and girls on the day, and like the ones who are MNU certified, I was just like blown away how like knowledgeable and confident they were, and I was like, that's how I want to be. I want to be able to talk on nutrition with that level of
confidence and competence.
Exactly, yeah. And they just that was what sealed the deal for me, really, in terms of, right, it's going to be a big investment, but you know, that level is the end result of it, and that will pay off over my career as well. And as well for me, just feeling confident that I have, like, I've done everything I can.
The best education.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that I'm invested in that, and that will lead to better results and better business in the long term, and that, you know, it's all gains momentum.
And like I say, you can be confident that you've had the best education available to you in that particular sector.
Exactly.
And I think that's a huge thing, especially again when you're trying to persuade clients. Why use you over these three other people that may be a bit cheaper or maybe have been doing it a bit longer, but you're better qualified.
Yeah.
So let's get into some nutrition talk now.
Yeah, go for it.
So for fighters especially, this is sort of why we do this podcast, is for combat sport athletes, be it amateur or professional. The sort of diets varies from person to person. Biologically, everyone's a bit different in what sort of foods sit well with them. A lot of people are lactose intolerant nowadays. Some people, we spoke about it.
I'm not good with carbs.
You're not good with carbohydrates, whereas my body soaks them up like a sponge. What do you think is the best diet per se? Is it a balanced diet? Is it? I know a lot of people stand by low carb, but for me that's always been unsustainable. My energy levels plummet. So if you were taking on a brand new client per se, what would you, to start with, what would be the advice you give?
What's the process?
So in our initial consultation, that would be where we would decide what the best approach would be. And obviously there's obviously not one best diet, you know, blanket recommendation that you can give to everyone. And so, like you said, we're all different biologically as well, and, you know, in terms of our environment and upbringing and stuff like that. So it's about finding what has worked for them in the past, what maybe has not worked so well, and then using that as a sort of lens through which to select what diet would work for them. So like you said, if you know, feel like you don't tolerate carbs too well, or maybe they make you sleepy or something like that, then maybe we'd look to more of a moderate approach in that. But in terms of the actual diet itself, I wouldn't normally recommend cutting out any food groups, really.
Unless you're severely allergic.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're lactose intolerant.
But I'm allergic to prawns. No, you'll be fine.
No, you have to.
Stop cutting prawns.
Yeah.
We'll try with oysters instead.
So I would always favour a balanced approach, and then you can refine and tweak things from that.
And what's the first bit of advice you normally give like a prospective client? Is it sort of like throw everything you know out the window, or is it start from scratch, or is it like, well, you've been doing this, right?
Fridge, like everything. Just...
No, but I mean, for me personally, like my diet's good 6 days a week, and then I always go to shit one day a week, and I sit there and crunch Oreos, and like, before you know it goes to crap. And a lot of that is willpower. Like I struggle with the whole have 80% of your diet being these good foods, stop cutting things out, stop restricting certain things. But I'm just a person that if it's there, it gets eaten. That honestly, I'm terrible with it. So for me, I'm one of the sort of the staple. If it's not in the house, if it's not available to me, then that's better for me. But that's difficult when you've got a family and things like that. So how do you sort of start that process? Do you do it on a person by person basis, on their circumstance, on their previous experience? How would you start?
100% on an individual basis. Like you said, you're maybe not one of those people. I'm not really one of those people either who can just like have a few treats and just keep it in moderation. It's like the whole abstinence versus moderation thing. So are you one person who can, you know, just have a cookie and leave it at that, and that allows you to feel like you've had a bit of flexibility,
or
and you feel satisfied? Or exactly. And like from what I've seen in fighters, like I think we tend to be more towards the extreme personality type thing. So we're more like abstinence basically. But it would always come down to the individual, really. And what I like to do is try and find the low-hanging fruit. So what change is gonna have the biggest impact? So like for you, like you mentioned there, it might be like controlling your diet at the weekend. That, you know, if your diet is good 6 days of the week, 5 days of the week, and you're just sort of undoing your hard work on those 2 days of the weekend, that would be where we focus.
No, it's not even a joke, mate. Like, it's so bad. Like, so if I'm at work and training and all these things, perfect.
Fine.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, because I've got sort of like a schedule and I stick to it. These are the times I eat. These are the foods that are available to me, and that's it. It's done. And as soon as you sort of give me some freedom at the weekends, and I've got a bit of spare time on my hands.
Ice cream cookie sandwich.
Yeah, and I open a cupboard to sort of get myself some food because I'm never really at home.
Yeah.
So when I am at home, I open the cupboard and there's like the kids' food there, and I'm like, oh damn, it's Christmas. Tubes of Smarties go missing. Like Emma's like, I bought this sticky toffee pudding. Where's it gone? And I'm like, it's all around my face. Like, I have no idea.
That packet under the sofa.
Yeah, I'm that guy. But I mean, and those habits unfortunately come from my mother's the same. My mum's got some terrible eating habits, and I think I've sort of picked them up from her, and I just can't get rid of them.
Yeah, I think once you've picked them up as well, it's hard to sort of get rid of them.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's not like, right, if we were to work together, I'd say, right, stop all that at the weekend, like, here's what you're going to eat, blah, 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 'cause it's just not realistic. No one's going to be able to do that. You can't just go from one to the other, like, you know, like flicking a switch. You know?
Like the cliche, you tell someone not to do something and they're going to be like more tempted almost to do it. Yeah,
exactly. There's a psychological word for it, but it's
escaping.
It's escaping me right now. But yeah, it's like as soon as you say, like, you know, it's the like classic experiments, like, don't think of a white polar bear. Like, everyone thinks of a white polar bear. It's like as soon as you're told not to do it, or like you feel that sense of like restriction,
makes it worse.
It makes it more appealing.
It's like almost with the lockdown thing. As soon as people say, "Well, you can't go to the gym," just like, now I'm going to go to the gym even more.
Exactly.
Yeah, I might have had a rest day, but now I don't want to.
Exactly.
And so, do you find with nutrition specifically, and we're talking about sort of cheating diets, do you believe in cheat days and things of that nature, or do you believe in, look, make up 80% of your diet with whole foods, with good food, and then even if every day you have a little bit of something, is that good, or is that throw it out the window?
It's better to have a reward mechanism.
I would definitely try and sway people away from using like terms like cheat days and stuff like that, because it's like, I very much like the idea that you're never, I suppose it's not like you're cheating on your diet, because then that feeds into the whole thing that I see with fighters just being completely on or completely off, right?
Yeah.
It's like either you're eating 100% like clean every day, or you're just like eating shit like junk food 3 times a day. And I think having things like cheat meals, or like, I'm just breaking my diet for this meal, it just feeds into that mindset.
It reinforces that those foods are bad, and then you want them more.
Exactly. So what I like to do is like planning flexibility. So like for most people, it would be a day at the weekend where you just eat in a bit more of a relaxed way. You're still, you know, maybe having the same number of meals, but maybe you're just treating yourself to dessert, or maybe like having a slightly different meal, slightly more indulgent meal than you normally would.
Cookies.
But that's it. It's like the difference in how you actually feel after a day of like relaxed eating, but still like you know, not going crazy, versus like a cheat day. A cheat day, it's like how you actually feel. It isn't that different, but the effect it has on your diet is massive.
Yeah. So the damage you do to it is greater than the actual reward. So a day of cheating on your diet is probably 4 days to then catch back up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things like you could diet hard all week and then be like, oh, I just had one meal that was unhealthy. Maybe you had a takeaway at the weekend. But that meal could be like starter, main, dessert, and then like beers and you know, snacking on stuff. So actually that is like, although it's just one meal,
it's not.
It's versus literally, say you have 3 meals a day, one of those meals is like maybe a takeaway or something like that. Yeah. Just leaving it at that.
Yeah. Or have a beer with a steak or something like that. Yeah.
Just like feeling like he was like, oh, I just only had one meal that wasn't healthy. Like
doing things in moderation.
Yeah.
So you're not a fan of sort of pulling out any specific food types. Talk to us about like the importance of glycogen, especially for fighters, for recovery and performance. Because one thing we've been speaking about is like fat loss and weight loss over athletic performance and muscle gain. And is there like a fine line between the two? Is there like a happy medium in which, like, one thing for me is that if I'm on a restricted diet, I think I over restrict to the point where my performance at the gym suffers. So I can't lift as heavy. I'm a lot more lackluster in the mornings. I struggle to get out of bed. When we roll jiu-jitsu and things of that nature, if I'm hitting pads, like I don't feel as though I've got as much energy, not as much explosive power. But then as soon as I indulge a little bit in these fatty foods or foods that I probably shouldn't be having or should be having it at least in more moderation, I've at least got the energy to perform at the gym, and I smash everyone when I'm rolling and things of that nature. But it's like this catch-22 where I sort of want to be leaner and carry less weight to perform better. But then
you
also
can't fuel yourself.
Precisely.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line to be walking that between, eating enough to fuel a performance, so you're still feeling good during training, and then eating little enough that you're actually losing weight, assuming that is your goal. And for anyone that doesn't know as well, so glycogen is just how carbs are stored in your muscles. It's a fuel store, it's just energy, and so if you're exercising at a high intensity, that will be using those glycogen stores for energy, basically. And so, like you said, what I would recommend for that is tailoring the carbs to the intensity of the day. That way you're like, imagine you have like a budget for the week. You're consuming them when they're needed and when they'll be benefiting you. And then maybe if you're just doing some, low intensity cardio, or you've got like a rest day at the weekend, then sort of pulling the carbs back a little bit there. And then you can sort of place them where they'll benefit you during your sessions. And that's the same with calories as well. So obviously you've got carbs that will fuel your performance, but calories as a total source of energy as well. So I'd look to periodize that as well, which basically just means change it but based on the day. So higher calories on your hardest training day. So say you, like, I don't know, on a Friday you've got strength conditioning in the morning, sparring in the evening or something, so that's like quite a high intensity day. That day you'd probably be having higher calories, higher carbs, so you can fuel yourself. And then if Sunday's your rest day and you just do nothing all day, or you just go for a walk, don't really do any exercise, that would be when you'd be that's where you'd be creating most of the calorie deficit from that day where your energy needs aren't as high. So you're not then taken away from your training performance, and you're, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes every bit of sense. I think the thing a lot of combat sport athletes, myself included, and I know you've done it, is taking rest days, and that psychological barrier that you think, like, if I take a rest day, like a complete rest day,
I'm going to lose everything.
I'm going to lose everything. My progress is going to go out the window. I feel like shit. I sort of get almost like restless leg syndrome, where like I'm itching to do something, and then so eating less sort of becomes a bit of a chore, if anything. And I think, well, I'd rather just work out, and then I can still indulge in some more food. But I have hunger all the time. Like I could eat all the time.
I'm fine right up until like literally the minute we finish training. I need to eat. But all day I can get up, go to work all day, and if it's like kettlebells or rolling or cycling, the minute I get back or stop, I'm so hungry when I get back from a ride.
Ravenous,
or like from rolling or something like that. But all day I've got no appetite. It's really weird.
I've started doing, one of the things we implemented when I first started training with Aaron was like active rest days, sort of what you touched on then. So it's not complete rest, but it's also not sat on your ass all day doing nothing. So even if it's like some stretching or some like bag work or a 45-minute walk.
That's what I normally do on my rest days. I'm a big fan of that as well. Not like fighters are notorious for just like smashing it, twice a day or whatever during training, going ham, and then just lying on the sofa for the rest of the day, and rest days just doing nothing. So I'm a big fan of keeping that active rest and recovery in this. You're using your body as well.
It is that fighter's mentality, isn't it? Like you say, it's all or nothing. It's extremes.
That's one of the biggest things that I think hold fighters back actually from reaching their potential as well. I know I've been there as well, so I can definitely see in myself. I've got those tendencies as well. And like I remember, it was especially prominent when I was training when I was at uni and the first time I was fighting and stuff like that. Trained so hard, and then like every fight week I'd get ill because I was just so like run down. I was just like, I remember like I went for like I think maybe 6 weeks or something without like a single day off. And it was like looking back now, I was like, God, such an idiot. Like how would you do that? But in the moment you're like, I'm going to give it 100%. Like I don't want there to be
any excuse,
any doubt in my head that my opponent's trained harder than me or whatever. Like, but you think that's something you see in a lot of fighters.
Yeah, I think everyone has made that mistake as well. I know I've done it 10 times over. I think the problem at the moment is a lack of competition is what we were talking about. So it's difficult to find motivation to stick to a nutrition plan, to train with that intensity and sort of do everything right. Whenever I've got a comp booked in or something like that, everything gets dialed in. Nutrition's a lot better because I know I've got to make weight.
Yeah.
Everything, because I want to perform, I take my rest and recovery a lot more seriously. I make sure I'm getting a good amount of hours sleep. I make sure I'm taking my supplements. I make sure that I'm being sensible, as opposed to at the moment it's sort of like almost like hobbyists. Like when we're allowed to roll, we get some rounds in. When I can lift weights, I'll lift weights. But it's like because I've got no target in mind, no goal in my head, it's like, well, it's sort of
got that like external motivation.
Precisely.
Like, right, this is all like helping towards this one thing.
Yeah.
I feel like you're sort of spinning your wheels a little bit.
Exactly, and that's sort of it. I'm stuck in limbo at the moment, especially with these constant lockdowns.
Spinning the wheels.
Yeah.
Like that. I think that one.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
So what is your average day as a combat sports athlete? What does your average day look like in regards to your nutrition? Take us through sort of the moment you wake up, regardless of whether you fast or not. What do your meals look like?
So it changes actually, and I think it all comes back to the sort of mantra of doing what works for you at the moment. So like I've been through periods in the past where I've like fasted for the morning and then had lunch and dinner, and that's worked for me then. At the moment, I'm just having 3 square meals a day, not doing any snacking. I'm finding that's working wonders for me in terms of just feeling completely satisfied throughout the day. I know we're talking about it a bit before the podcast, and I was saying it got to a point where like in terms of the numbers of my nutrition intake, it was all good, like supporting my goals. But actually, in terms of how I felt, I was feeling like hungry a lot. I was, you can almost identify in yourself, like you start to think about food just all the time. And I was like, I need to sort this out.
That's right.
This is not right. Yeah.
That's right.
And so I started focusing more on sort of like whole natural foods and just having 3 decent sized meals throughout the day rather than small meals, just snacking regularly. I'm going to plug my recent video here, but I just put a video on YouTube.
I was about to plug it. I watched it. Go on, carry on.
And basically what I talk about in that is like, I call it the not quite cycle, where it's like you're not quite satisfied and you're not quite hungry throughout the day, and you just go through this like constant state of not being quite satisfied.
And snacking does that. Like if you have like a protein bar, then you're like, well, where's the rest?
Yeah.
It's like,
exactly. And it's something that I've seen in a lot of clients actually that I've worked with over the past few months. It's like, I'll get their food diary and it'll be like, snack. I'll be like, where's your meal?
That's a meal. You've had enough snacks there that you've made up like 800 calories, which you could have had like a proper sit down meal.
Exactly. And like what I've been focusing on much more recently is like I was saying, like with the whole food, so making sure that those 3 meals a day are full of like natural, filling, like high satiety foods, things like potatoes, like lean meats, vegetables, like fruits and stuff like that, and
the things that are nutrient dense.
Exactly. So like,
do you supplement on top of that as well then?
Yeah.
If you can't get like a certain amount of X into a diet in the day, then do you?
So I'm not actually taking too many supplements at the moment, just because of like lack of competition.
Yeah.
And in terms of just, I feel like I can cover most bases for my diet, for my goal at the moment, which is just being healthy, staying like relatively good in shape and just sort of keep ticking over. But when I have a fight coming up, when I'm looking to dial things in a little bit more, get that extra, 5% or whatever, that's when I would be using the supplements more. At the moment, I'm using vitamin D and fish oil. And generally for fighters, I would recommend caffeine. I know like a lot of fighters are a bit pre-workout fiends. So any pre-workout, pretty much the main beneficial ingredient would be caffeine. So looking to implement that before morning sessions, ideally not in the evening. Creatine definitely. So you can't really get the dose of creatine from whole foods. So that is one where like I'd always like opt for a whole foods approach. So aiming to get whatever vitamins and minerals you need from foods rather than going for a supplement. But for things like creatine, it's basically impossible to do that. You have to have like 1,000 steaks.
So while we're on the subject of creatine, because I've taken creatine, again, only when I'm training, but if I'm truthful, I don't actually it's just someone said, make sure you take creatine. What is the benefit of it?
So what it does is it increases the amount of strength and power basically you can generate. So obviously as a like combat athlete, that's important. And basically just allows you to increase strength and power. So then obviously if you can do that, you can lift more. And then it just helps with athletic performance. It's essentially like explosive performance basically.
Do you use it as a recovery tool then?
I think there is some evidence to say that it can help support recovery, and I would say that just ties in with the other
With the whole
benefits
approach, yeah.
as well. Yeah.
And regarding time in creatine, is there like an optimum time to take it? Is it like within 30 minutes of a workout?
There's not really like a big difference. If there is any optimal time, it would be post-workout. But to be honest, it's one of those ones you can take any time of day, really.
And you'll see a benefit.
And the percent difference is, it might not even be a realistic percent in the real world. Like, it might not make any real difference. So what I would say in terms of like, I don't know what sort of dose you were taking when you were having it.
Literally one scoop. I couldn't even tell you what it was. It's the MyProtein creatine powder, and so it's just it advises on there 1 scoop a day. So what I was doing is, as soon as I finished my workout, I'd just chuck that. It wouldn't be in a shake. I'd just chuck it with water. Even
I've always done it post workout as well. So it's interesting to hear that you're actually better off pre.
Yeah.
No,
post.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so
within 30 minutes.
If you're going to time it at any time of day, take it post workout, but it doesn't really matter. So you can take it in the morning. If that's it, what matters is that you take it.
Yeah.
And in terms of like dosing, so the way it's not like short-term effects. It's not like if you take creatine pre-workout, it's going to benefit you in that workout. It's the accumulation of it in your muscles. And so you could just take like 1 scoop a day for 20 days or something, and by that point your muscles would be saturated and you'd have enough to experience performance benefit.
Cool.
What you can also do, what I do and what I recommend, is to just load it for like 5 days, and that basically means your muscle stores of creatine just get full quicker. And so what you would do then is take, probably in terms of dosage, about 20 grams a day. So maybe, I think a scoop is about 5 grams. So take 4 scoops a day. You can spread them out as well. And then after 5 days, you've like essentially loaded your muscles with it, rather than it taking like 20 days over time.
Because like, in the packet you get like this tiny little scooper.
Yeah.
So whereas I got rid of that and I do one actual large scoop.
Yeah.
So
like a protein.
You got it.
Yeah.
So then essentially that's probably is like
your one dose is probably 4 smaller doses.
So you could do that for 5 days, and then at which point they'd be pretty much fully loaded, and you just need a maintenance dose. So just get one of those small scoops per day, and that would just keep them topped up.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of ticket to take away from this as well. So you're like, regarding your 3 meals a day, your staple diet, what does your plate look like? What are you making up those 3 meals with? Like, what percentage is protein, what percentage is carbohydrates, and what are you looking at nutrient wise? Yeah,
in terms of protein, generally, if you're going by like plate size, roughly a quarter of my plate would be protein. That's generally what I'd recommend as well. In terms of like the dose as well, so for most people, probably somewhere between like 20 and 40 grams of protein would be enough per meal. If you want to if you're a bit of a nerd like me and you want to get down into the numbers, I'd say 0.4 of a kilo, 0.4 grams per kilo. Yeah, or 0.5. So
of your weight.
Yeah, of your body weight. So if you're 100 kilos, then 40 to 50 grams. If you're 50 kilos, then
and that's what you were saying for a day, because some people.
So that would be per meal.
Okay.
And then you'd have. What I would say is, at the moment, I'm just having 3 meals a day just because I just find it easier, and I'm losing weight as well a little bit at the moment. For fighters, what I would generally recommend, especially if you've got a fight coming up, to have 4 meals throughout the day, or 4 servings of protein. So if one of them is just a protein shake, that can count as a meal, and you can have more substantial meals. But I would try and get 4 servings of protein in throughout the day, evenly spread as well. So probably every 3 to 5 hours generally.
And so what are you basing that on? Is that like, because I know a lot of trainers would say you need to have a pound of protein per kilo body weight or whatever.
Yeah, like a gram per pound.
A gram,
yeah. So for fighters generally I'd say about 2 grams per kilo. Mm-hmm. I work in kilos, I can't do pounds.
New money, not old.
Yeah. That's it. So I'd say the optimal range somewhere between 1.8 grams per kilo and 2.5 grams per kilo.
So, and do you find that a struggle to get that into your daily diet? Because I find if I'm mixing things up a bit, and I'm using this as a basis, so I'll have like a protein shake in the morning, then I'll have like some tuna or some fish or something at lunch, then I'll have a substantial meal in the evening, like some chicken or a steak or whatever it is, some beef, whichever. And then sometimes when you obviously chuck all that into like my fitness pal, you're like, oh, I'm still only at like 140 grams of protein today. And then all of a sudden you've got to try and rack it up even more.
So what I like to do is I like to divide it. So what I would do is give you like a total protein intake. So say like, just for argument's sake, 120 grams or something. So like that would probably be more suitable for someone like my size. 120 grams. Then I divide that by 4. So you've got 4 feedings throughout the day.
Yeah.
How much do you need to get at each feeding? So that'd be 30 grams at each feeding, and then at each meal, if I'm hitting that 30 grams, I know by the end of the day that would have hit my target. So I like break it down into like a per meal target, and then that means you don't get to the end of the day and you think, oh shit, I've still got to get an extra like 30 grams in.
When I started monitoring it, that's sort of what happened. I was like, oh, my protein intake's really low for what it should be. So dialed it up and, like you say, started tracking it per meal. But then also before never took into account the other things that contain protein, because you always, whenever I think of protein, I just think of meat. But then like milk has some protein in it. Even like
nuts,
fiber,
like
nuts, even
fats.
like a wholemeal wrap has a degree of protein in it. And then once you started adding all those things, it's like, now I see where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So, but before that, it was difficult to dial it in and go, well, this is how much protein.
Envisaging that plate of meat.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, I have to eat 7 packs of chicken today to get my protein intake. This is I can't sustain it. Yeah. So it's like carnivore diet, and it's like that's all I'm eating is steak now, just to get the protein up. But then you don't realise the amount of different foods. So separate to lean meats, what other sources of protein are you looking at? Do you look at Greek yogurts? Do you look at
100%.
Skyr? Are you on the Skyr?
Yeah, I'm on the Skyr hype, and the have you seen those Arlo yogurts? They got like 20 grams on the side. They're
that's
pretty
what
good as well.
They're great.
Yeah, so things like that, like yogurts are great, Greek yogurts, Skyr, quark, like whey protein as well, all sorts. Yeah, so like as you mentioned, lean meats, poultry, fish is another good one. And then you've got your like vegetarian sources of protein as well, so things like eggs, which I'd recommend for everyone as well. And then you've got like beans, legumes, stuff like that, like chickpeas and lentils and stuff like that. So they like you said, they can all add up throughout the day as well. Even if per gram they don't have a ton of protein, but if you mix a few together, then you can soon sort of get up there.
So with meal ideas, your 3 meals a day, what do they normally consist of?
I like to keep it fairly consistent each day. I'm a simple man. I don't like to think too much, I don't want too many decisions.
Just Chateaubriand.
Just basic stuff.
Red wine sauce.
Potatoes.
I will have porridge pretty much for breakfast every day with some form of protein. So either one of those like protein yogurts or just like a protein shake.
Yeah.
Lunch normally be some sort of just lean meat plus vegetables plus a source of carbs, basically. And if you want like like a visual image, roughly like a quarter plate of lean meat, quarter plate of carbs, and then a half plate of veggies generally.
And do you stick to green veg, or do you mix it up?
I mix it up, just anything really, as much as I can get my hands on. So lunch and dinner basically follow the same template. So I'll base it around my protein. So whether if I'm having fish, maybe I'll have some like potatoes with it and veggies, or if I'm having chicken, I might do like a stir fry or something like that. But I find it always helps to base your meal around the protein and the veggies, because they're essentially what you wanted to get every meal. So every meal you want to get one source of protein and at least one type of veggie. I'd normally recommend to mix it up and aim for 2 or 3 per meal. It's important to get like a variety of veggies in your diet, but if you base it around the protein and the veggies, and then you can just sort of mix and match the carbs, and I find that it's a pretty simple template to work from. I always fall into the trick of like the packet sauces as well. So I'll have like what I think is a really healthy meal, like you say, almost like a chicken stir fry.
Yeah. You'll have like some really good vegetables and stuff in it, and then you'll buy like a satay sachet, and it just it's full of sugar. And it's like you fall into that trap of trying to make it taste better than really probably what it needs to. It's just that and I know you mentioned it on that YouTube video actually, in that you've almost tricked your body into needing sugars and wanting that sweet taste, whereas if you actually dialed everything back and got used to eating whole foods all the time, that would be enough. Yeah, definitely. It's just that our palates are sort of accustomed to these high sugar foods. You keep triggering the brain, keep giving it. It's like almost the carrot on the end of the stick. You keep again, here's a little bit, and I find it can just sometimes, if you're just constantly having those
it hinders more than it helps.
Yeah, those like hyper palatable foods. Basically like foods that are really tasty, things that are high in fat, high in salt, high in sugar. It's harder because that becomes your normal taste. So and then if you I'll give the example as well of people who basically can't have veggies on their own because they're they're too boring and stuff. It's probably because you have so much like sugary, fatty, salty foods that these like natural flavours,
they don't hit the taste receptors.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, in terms of personally, I've been focusing on recently is dialing back things like that. So like the pre-packaged sauces and trying to.
That's one thing. Since listening to your YouTube video, that's one thing that I took from that video. I was like, right, I'm going to pull back on those things and sort of try and restart my taste buds to just. Those whole foods will then be enough to...
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be flavourless as well. Like I'm really starting to get into using things like seasoning and stuff like that, which are like herbs and spices that are great for you and basically add...
James's tasty veg book will be out for Christmas next year.
That leads on to one of the questions that we were sort of saving for the Q&A, but while we're here, we may as well mention it. So if you had to have like 3 seasonings in the cupboard at all times, which 3 are you going to put?
That's a good one. I like that. That's a good question. 3 seasonings, right? It would be chili, garlic. What's the third one? Let me have a think.
Mine would probably be like
chili,
paprika or something.
Yeah, I'll go paprika.
Yeah, maybe paprika or lime. Can I have lime juice?
Lime,
does that count?
Lime's a good one, yeah.
Chili, garlic, and lime. Probably.
Can I have lime? No, it's a fucking fruit.
It's not dry enough. Yeah, that's chili, garlic, and lime. That's mine.
Chili, garlic, and lime. That's a really good one. I never use lime, and I probably should because I really like the taste of lime. But I've never got it in the house. It's always one of them things that you go to Asda and you walk straight past. And I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I forgot lime again.
That's one of the things.
It's one of my 3 as well.
Yeah. You can add a lot of flavour with basically 0 calories, like things like lime and dry seasonings like that. And it's not like if you're having lemon, lime, whatever.
Good antioxidants.
Yeah, and it's adding like liquid as well. It's not just like completely dry seasoning. So.
Sick. That's a good one.
Yeah, that was a good question. I like that.
I'm going to change my diet up. Like I say, I've been watching a lot of your content and reading through a lot of your Instagram and stuff like that. Long before, as you know, I've been probably following you on Instagram for about 2 years on my personal
Since the
account.
beginning.
Yeah, on my personal account. And then it is, since getting you on as a guest as well, I've been making sure I'm engaging with all your content to make sure we can have a good chat today. And one of the things I've definitely taken on board is, like I say, dial back those packet sauces and those things that have hidden calories and hidden sugars and salts and stuff like that, and try and put them back.
And it's not always a case that you've got to completely cut them out, but it's just being mindful and being aware that, especially if you're like you mentioned, you feel like you're sort of hungry all the time, thinking about food a lot, that could be something to look to change in. Because even though like the meal overall looks healthy and feels healthy, it's little things like that you mentioned.
Push it over the edge.
I think a lot of that feeling hungry all the time as well, again, that's because of a lack of competition. Because when it's dialed in and I have other things to focus on, that goes out the window. But at the moment, with how lockdown's been and you're spending more time at home, therefore you're around all
surrounded
these foods.
by food, especially like if you live with other people who obviously they've got their own foods and stuff in, and maybe they're not trying to diet or for whatever reason.
I can't say to my 6-year-old stepdaughter, you can't eat this anymore because I can't have it.
It's not lime.
But I think once some form of normality comes back, then it will go to a case where I can dial things in again. Definitely. So let's move on to combat sports specifics. Let's talk about weight cutting, because that's a big one. I know there's a lot of advocates for reducing the amount fighters cut. We see in the UFC all the time about people missing weight.
Yeah.
So what sort of process do you go through when looking at, one, how much is like a safe amount of weight to cut for a fighter, and 2, how you go about that process of cutting the weight safely over a period? Like we saw Mike Perry recently on UFC where he was like, I know, but even he knew it. That's what I didn't get.
He was like posting stuff during fight week.
2 weeks before, he's like sat there eating steaks. He's like, might struggle to make weight. It's like you knew in advance.
Yeah.
Why didn't you dial it back sooner? So talk to us about your process.
So my process would be generally, so in terms of, I almost work back from the weigh-in. So say they've got to be this weight, I would say a safe percentage to cut over the last fight week. 100%, no more than 10% of your body weight. So if you're a fighter who's listening now and over that last fight week you cut more than 10% of your body weight, that is too much and you're almost definitely harming your performance. I'd say optimally, probably 6 to 8% of your body weight you'd want to cut in that last week. It's for MMA as well. So talking about day before weigh-ins, MMA or Muay Thai, if you do it in this country, it's a day before weigh-in, so you might weigh in, midday, and then the next day you'll fight in the evening. So you've got a lot of time, probably about 36 hours to recover. Then you could cut 6 to 8, definitely no more than 10%. If it's the same day weigh-in, that's a whole different story. But I'll stick with the day before weigh-ins now because that's the most common one.
Yeah.
So weigh-in weight, work it back to what they need to be at the start of fight week. So that's like, right, so from where you are now, say they come to me 8 weeks out, the start of their camp, then you work out how much they've got to lose to get to that fight weight week, and then that's where you would work out how to create the deficit over that 8 week, 10 week, sometimes 6 week period of the fight camp. And that's where it's a bit of an art and a science in terms of balancing the weight loss, so they're losing weight that's going to allow them to make weight safely, but then not making it essentially just become a fat camp where they have to just like diet and their training.
They've still got to be able to perform.
Yeah, exactly. So it's towing that line.
There's a risk over reward, I imagine. Is there a guideline regarding calorie deficit for if you have a deficit of say 400 calories a day? This is how much weight you'll lose. Does it depend on, obviously, I imagine the heavier the person, like when anyone goes on a diet the first few weeks, because they're heavier, they've got more to lose. It comes off a lot quicker. So, but yeah, regarding calorie deficit, is there like if you have a 400 calorie deficit a day, this is how much you'll lose a week?
Yeah, so generally trying to convert between kilos and pounds here.
Okay.
So 3,500 calories at a weekly level, so 500 calories a day, that would be 1 pound per week. So.
Okay. Which is
basically half a kilo.
Half a kilo, yeah. Which is 2.2 pounds to a kilo.
Yeah, and that's like the guideline sort of thing. So it's not, like I said, it's not always an exact science. If there's errors in estimations, errors in tracking and stuff like that. So there's all a degree of guesswork and a degree of estimation and sort of tweaks and refinements you have to make as you go on based on progress. But generally, 3,500 calories a week, that would lead to half a kilo roughly per week weight loss.
And is that what you would advise a fighter? Because obviously, if they come in and they've got a lot more to lose, like Khabib, for instance, has been known, he fights at lightweight, but he's been known to walk around at 205 pounds at the time.
Big old boy.
Yeah, and you can imagine that he's going to need a bit more than 8 weeks to be able to do that safely. Yeah. So, dialing it back, what do you sort of say? To say, for myself, for instance, I'm currently walking around at I think I was 87 kilos yesterday. I compete at 85. I like to walk around at 85. So if you were to reduce my calories, what would you put that down to per week? What would be, instead of losing like half a pound a week, what would you say is a safe amount to lose per week in the lead up to a fight without risking any athletic performance per se?
So I'd say between half a kilo and a kilo per week, you can do reasonably without too much damaging of your training performance. That's like a pretty moderate rate of weight loss. If you're in a position where if you lose half a kilo per week and
you
that
might make weight.
So a lot of guys they'll come to me and it'll be right, they need to lose more than half a kilo per week, and then you just have to increase the amount of deficit over based on how much they need to lose. But if someone needed to lose more than 1.25 or maybe 1.5, definitely more than 1.5 kilos a week, then you need to go up a weight class or go up a weight class
diet in between
or stop
camps
binging between camps. So but I would say for anyone listening, if you get to a weight, pre-camp where you can lose half a kilo to a kilo per week over the next 6 to 8 whatever many weeks, and if that puts you at a good weight at the start of fight week, then that's fine.
That's doable in that self.
Yeah.
Any more than that, then you need to, like you say, consider different weight classes or perhaps dialing it in.
Yeah.
Before that period.
Don't leave it to the last minute.
Well, that's it, and that's something I find with a lot of fighters as well, because it's sort of a vicious cycle, isn't it? You gain so much weight between fights that you have to really restrict yourself over the 8 weeks leading up to it.
It makes you miserable.
It makes you miserable. You're in such energy deficit. Like, your body is deprived of, thousands or if not tens or hundreds of thousands by the time you've reached the end of your camp. And that's when things happen. Like, you feel, I know I've been there as well early in my career, where you feel like you can't stop eating. And, maybe your family or your girlfriend or whatever are saying, how are you eating all this food? But it's almost not a lack of willpower. It's because your body has literally been deprived of energy over the past, however many weeks. It drives you, like your appetite and hunger, your body drives you to consume all these calories back. So
when we did a competition in Southampton, we all cut a little bit of weight. And obviously that's a bit different to MMA because it's like you weigh in 10 minutes before your bracket starts.
Yeah,
but we all cut, I'd say, a good couple of kilos each. And I've never seen you eat so much in my life as to post that competition. We went to a place called Sadler's Barbecue in Southampton, and you ordered the ultimate platter, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like a burger which literally stacked this high with all sorts, coleslaw and everything. And I'm heavier than James, and I've been fat, so I'd like to think that 9 times out of 10 I've got a greater appetite than you have. And you inhaled this post-fight meal. It was gone in an instant. And I'm struggling halfway through, and you just inhaled the entire thing.
Yeah.
But you see that all the time.
That's the same. Like I was saying earlier. Like I'm not. That's not just all right. Yeah, I cut weight for the comp, but that's. I don't eat. I can't snack. I can't graze. So like, I will eat when I really need to eat. Okay. Like I won't eat till tonight now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sitting there like, oh God, I'm really hungry. But when I'm hungry, it's like, right, I'm hungry. I need to eat.
Yeah.
So it's weird, but
it's not like persistent. It just it comes when it comes.
And I've always been like it. Like my parents said, like when I was younger, they used to think like, fucking hell, he's not actually eating. Like what's going on? But then in the evening, the gloves is off.
And I've seen it. It's impressive. Like, he'll come around my house for dinner because we get together quite a bit, and you'll come round, and then whatever everyone else has left, James will eat because he's not eating all day. Whereas everyone else is like, right, I'm done with my meal.
Yeah.
James is like, you're gonna finish that, and are you gonna finish that? And all of a sudden, all this extra food comes James's way, and he eats a lot, and it makes no sense to me. So going back to calorie deficits. There's got to be a point that too much of a calorie deficit is detrimental. Yeah. Can you lose the same amount of weight? So, like, say you have 2,000 calorie guideline a day, and you knock 400 calories off that, so you're only eating 600 calories, 1,600 calories. Sorry. Could you get away with losing the same amount of weight but having 2,000, or is it purely based on what you're using energy-wise? So. Obviously, a calorie deficit is created by 1, dialing back what you're eating, but 2, burning calories as well. So can you get away with losing the same amount of weight eating 2,000 calories as potentially you could eat in 1,600? Is there too much you can cut off where at some point you're not gaining anything from it?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of an art in finding the balance. So, what you can do, say like 2,000 is your like maintenance, right? So if you eat that, you won't gain, you won't lose weight. You could take some away, like you said there, like reduce 400, 500 calories from food, or you could do more exercise to burn that amount of calories. But I think like doing either on their own isn't normally great because your body, generally speaking, doesn't want to lose weight, right? In like a evolutionary sense, weight loss would mean, bad things for the brain. Yeah, exactly. And so what you might find is like when you increase that exercise, your activity throughout the day really drops off. So like, we've all been there, like I know I've definitely been there, like for some, like when I've been training in Thailand where the volume of training goes up so much that when you're not training, you're just like dead to the world, lie in your bed, just do nothing.
Thermogenesis, your body goes all hot and you're just broken.
Exactly, yeah. So it's NEAT is the word for it. So non-exercise activity thermogenesis, basically just calories you burn just through walking and moving around, stuff like that. And what you'll find is either when you go too much, your body can drop that off as a way to conserve energy. Mm-hmm. So if it senses that you're not getting enough energy in, sometimes those things can drop off, and that's why it's useful to make sure, having things like step counts or, the classic diet advice of like take the stairs instead of the elevator, little things like that do add up.
Park further away.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it works. It does work. A lot of people, a lot of nutritionists will say, like, you can dial all these things back, but even just increasing your steps from 5,000 to 10,000 a day, as silly as that sounds, it makes a difference. Like James was saying this morning, one of the big things when he got lean was, it's our friend James Windell, by the way. He,
there's a lot of Jameses. Right?
Yeah, there is a lot of Jameses. There's one of the things that sort of led to him getting so lean was the fact he dialed his nutrition back, but was the fact that he walked for 45 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes in the evening.
With
just
a pack,
with
20
a pack
kilos in,
to get his step count up. And that was one thing that he done, and that he thinks that he attributed the difference in how his appearance to solely doing those 245 minutes a day.
And that's it. It's creating the calorie deficit from like a few different areas, right? So maybe slightly increasing training a little bit, or doing walks and things like that, and then slightly reducing the amount of food, but making sure that you're like getting the most bang for your buck in terms of your food. So if you're eating like protein bars and stuff like that throughout the day, you're not really getting the most bang for your buck. You want to be eating fruits and vegetables and stuff, and then you're optimally fueling your body and you're feeling full from that. So like a common like criticism of like the calories approach, like the science-based approach, is that so you're just saying 200 calories of apples is the same as 200 calories of Mars bars. It's like, no, that's like a straw man argument. But like, I suppose what I'm trying to say is that the calories you're eating, you want to be getting them from the best food sources as possible. Really.
Foods and nutrient dense.
Yeah, nutrient dense, simple foods basically, minimally processed.
So going back to weight cutting, because we got slightly off target there, regarding that last week, in which you said it's like a 6 to 8% sort of the golden percentage. Any higher than that, you're risking a few things. How are you cutting that last percentage weight that week? Are you dialing back nutrition? Are you going mainly on a water cut? I mean, the time of like seeing fighters in salt baths and sauna suits and stuff like that, it's sort of becoming less and less now. But I know at least back in like sort of the glory days of UFC, you saw people crippling themselves in that last week trying to make weight and sweat water out. So what are you doing? What advice are you giving your fighters in that in fight week, that last week?
Yeah, thankfully now, like over the past few years, like nutrition for combat sports has skyrocketed, and thankfully it's a lot safer and more evidence-based now.
Cheers, Mike Dolce.
He's a fucking unit.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's funny because of like COVID, I've not done any weight cuts like since earlier this year, so I'm trying to cast my mind back. But it's essentially you a bit like with the calorie deficit, you want to get the weight loss from a lot of different places, right? So like you mentioned with the UFC guys back in the day, the days of like UFC 1, they would like just sit in a sauna, sweat out 5 kilos, 10 kilos, whatever, and put themselves on death's door.
But also they could rehydrate with an IV back then, so it was a lot different, and they were on all the Mexican supplements.
Getting a little extra bonus.
Yeah, a bit of EPO and jabs.
So that example of like sitting in the sauna, doing all your weight from the water cut, is taking all the weight you're losing is coming from your body's water basically. And there's only a certain amount you can lose from that before it's really detrimental to your health. So what I like to do is take that weight from as many different places as possible. And I'll go through all the methods I use and stuff, but they're varying degrees of risk. So losing water weight through like sweating, that is one of the higher risk tactics, where like obviously you've got performance risk, but also health and death in some cases, unfortunately. So from the start of fight week, what I generally do is I get fighters to water load, which basically involves drinking a lot of water.
How much is a lot?
A lot would be roughly, so it's 1 litre per 10 kilos you weigh. So if you're 60 kilos, 6 litres, 70 kilos, 7 litres, 80 kilos, it's a lot of water, yeah. You're going to repeat a lot. So you do that probably from the Monday to, let's do it for the example of a Saturday weigh-in. So Monday to Thursday, you drink that amount of water, and then the day before the weigh-in, you'd cut it off, and you would have, so if you've been drinking 6 litres, you would then have 600 millilitres, 7 litres, 700 millilitres, basically, and spread that throughout the day. And then basically what that does is your body gets used to taking all this water, basically peeing it out, and then you cut off the water, and it takes a little time for your body to catch up, basically. So you keep peeing, but you're not taking any water in, so you end up at a net water loss, basically. And that is a method that's super low risk. You're not, as long as you're not, consuming such high volumes that you're getting into the realms of like hyponatremia. But if you go by the numbers I've said there, with whatever it is, 0.1 times your body weight in litres, then that's fine, and you're not at risk with that. So that's like quite a low risk method, basically. So that would be number one. Other methods I would use over the fight week as well. So for guys, if you're doing, let's talk about like the day before weigh-in, right? So just because that's a common one, especially with MMA and Thai boxers. I'd look at cutting carbs over the week as well. So like we spoke about earlier, you've got your glycogen stores in your muscles. So for each gram of glycogen, you also you hold on to 3 to 4 grams of water as well. So once you lose those glycogen stores, you lose that water retention with it as well. So if you've ever gone on a low carb diet, lost loads of weight, a decent proportion of that weight would be from the glycogen and the water. But that just means over fight week doing a low carb diet. So if you want numbers, maybe aiming for less than 50 grams a day, sort of into almost like the keto territory there, getting super low carbs. That will allow you to lose that glycogen, lose that water weight as well from your body. So most people, just through doing that, can lose, a few percentages. Their body weight could be up to like a few kilos. And as long as you have a day before weigh-in, so you've got enough time, at least 24 hours to replenish those carbs, then you're all good. If you're doing a same day weigh-in, I would keep carbs high, and that would be a more last resort thing to cut, because obviously low carbs aren't going to affect your health, but it is going to affect your performance if you've not got enough carbs. So we've got the water load and we've got the carbs. Other things would be a low fiber diet. So this is probably one of the most underused strategies by fighters. It just seems like no one's using it, but it's super effective and basically zero risk. So just for 2 to 3 days before the fight, you would cut out fiber. So that means no whole grains, which you probably wouldn't be having anyway if you're cutting out the carbs. No fruits. Vegetables are a real minimum, so either no vegetables, or if you can't do that, I know it doesn't feel right for a lot of people, and some people aren't comfortable with that, then having low fiber veg, so veg where you've peeled the skin off, so maybe cucumber that's peeled, or you can get some canned veg that's lower in fiber as well. But basically you go low fiber for a couple of days before the fight, and what that does is it just reduces the amount of gut residue. So at any given point in the time, depending on the amount of fiber we have, you've got some undigested food in your gut, basically. Reducing the fiber just allows that to pass through, clear out, and then that can be half a kilo to a kilo that you lose just through that. And especially if you are starting with a relatively high fiber diet, or at least getting enough fiber, then that can be like a no-brainer. You can lose a decent amount of weight, and for you guys who've cut weight before, knowing that you've got half a kilo or a kilo less to do in the sauna, it makes a big difference. And then what you'd want to be doing as well over those last few days is reducing salt as well. Yeah. So salt's an electrolyte, and it allows you to retain water, basically. So the theory goes that by reducing the salt,
you don't retain the
water. And I think that's pretty much it. And then you would get to I would say 24 hours before. That's when you would want to be doing dehydration, basically. And what I prefer, and what I find a lot of my clients prefer, is active sweating. So you've got active, which would be doing pad work in some extra layers, or even a sweatsuit, something like that that's active, as opposed to passive, which would be sitting in a sauna, sitting in a bar.
Yeah, because I think with passive, and I've done passive, sitting in a sauna is fucking miserable.
Because all you think about is how shit you feel.
Exactly. Whereas at least when you're hitting pads, or even if you're doing a state steady walk and you've got a bit of weight or something,
like you're doing something.
Even if you just put the incline on and you've got a sweatsuit on, or you're in the assault bike but at low intensity, something like that, at least you're thinking about the other activity. Yeah. But passive, it is just miserable, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So generally, again, with all things, and that seems like that's coming out as a bit of a theme here, is taking it from different areas. Mm-hmm. So with the weight loss, maybe you would do so.
There's no one-stop shop.
Exactly. So maybe just I like to vary as well. If you've got however a couple of kilos to lose in a bath or in a sauna, it can feel like an insurmountable mountain, basically. But if you do a bit of pads, that gets a kilo off. You do a bit of walking or whatever, that it's a little bit, and then you do a little bit of bath maybe at the end of the day.
And you've got 0.5 of a kilo.
Exactly. It's just a few little areas, gets you within touching distance.
And psychologically, that's got to be a lot better for...
Exactly. You're varying it up. Yeah, definitely. And so I wouldn't look at doing any of those methods longer than 24 hours before the weigh-in, really. So it would only really be evening before and morning of, depending on how much weight you have to lose. Generally, in terms of dehydration, 2 to 3% would be what I'd be looking at of your body weight. Ideally, not more than that. Once you get to the realms of 5%, that's when you start having a risk to your health basically and performance as well. So if you can get to a weight where, through all those other methods I've talked about, through fight week, you're 2 or 3% and you've just got a little bit to lose, then you're all good basically.
So post weight cut, once you've made weight and hopefully successfully made weight, how are you going to replenish your energy, your glycogen stores, your water? Like, what are you doing from sort of the moment they get off the scales? Take us through what you're going to do for the next 24-hour, 36-hour period to get fight ready.
Yeah, so this is probably more important even than the weight cut itself, because if you mess up or don't take a scientific approach to your refuel, then it doesn't matter if you've made weight.
Yeah. I've seen it. We've had guys in our gym that have made weight and then they've made themselves so sick refueling in the 24 to 36 hours before that they've had to put out the fight.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's been brutal.
Yeah, I've seen guys refueling with a can of Coke and a doner kebab. It's crazy. It's crazy what people get away with.
Might be the same fight.
So there's generally two goals you'd be aiming for post weigh-in. So rehydration, which would be the biggest priority, and it's also like the quickest to restore, and then also replenishing your glycogen stores through eating carbs basically. And so in terms of the amount of carbs to eat, I'd be aiming to eat 5 to 10 grams per kilo. Mm-hmm. So if you're 100 kilos, if you're a big guy, 500 to 1,000 grams of carbs. Obviously for most people it'd be less than that, and generally that will allow you to maximally replenish your carb stores basically from that low carb diet. So let's say five I'm lost on the maths again. 5 grams 500 grams
per kilo.
Oh, I'm confused myself now. I've had a mind blank. It's been so long since I've done a weight cut. So if I was 60 kilos, it would be 300 to 600 grams of carbs, basically. Yeah. I know it in terms of the weights, but I'm having to cast my mind back to all my lectures and stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. The thing is, the easiest way to put it across is by using your own experience. So
exactly.
By your weight.
So if you're like a 70 kilo fighter, probably like the average weight, 700 to 350 grams of carbs would maximally replenish you, basically. So that's the carb sorted, and generally you'd want to be getting that from fairly high GI sources, so not like brown rice, brown bread. You generally be going for like the white version, so white bread, white rice, and things like that aren't too high in fibre. And then you'd want to be having a fairly low fat diet as well, so fat slows down your digestion, and you want to be taking those carbs on as quickly as possible, basically.
I didn't know that.
So generally after a weigh-in, I would say protein, just your normal daily target of about 2 grams per kilo would be good, plus the amount of carbs that I've said there.
We're sticking out.
And then what you don't want to do is suddenly have a super high fibre diet. That's when you'll start getting like stomach issues and stuff like that. If you've been low fibre for the past 2 or 3 days, and then you suddenly start eating tons and tons of veg, it will give you some bloating and stomach issues. So generally keep fibre fairly low, and keep fat fairly low as well, because you want to get those calories in from protein and carbs, because they will benefit you in the refueling period before the fight. Yeah. In terms of water as well, so you want to get a rehydration drink. Generally, I find a mix of, so you have a 1 litre drink, half a litre of like Lucozade or Powerade, half a litre of water. That would generally allow you to refuel and get a good balance between getting some carbs in from the sports drink and then also getting water in as well. And so you just drink that after the weigh-in, immediately after drink, 600 to 900 millilitres, and then roughly about 1 litre, 1.5 litres per hour after that, based on how much you've lost. So say over in the sauna or the sweating, you lost 3 kilos for the next hour. For the next 3 hours, you'd be having a litre per hour to replenish that, and then just carry on drinking as normal throughout the rest of the day. Yeah,
I've seen some real big mistakes in regards to people cutting a lot of weight, like 10 to 20 pounds of weight, and then as soon as they've weighed in, they go for a steak dinner. Yeah, and it's just it doesn't go well. It ruins them. Like, I've seen people being sick. Even I remember at the last shock and awe, someone threw up in the stairwell, and it was after they had made weight. I mean, some of that can obviously be attributed to nerves and things as well, but I think they had made weight. and then started eating like carbs, like real starchy, like pasta and things like that, but ate too much and just made themselves sick. And all of a sudden they're having to put out the fight because they can't then get back to where they should be ready for competition.
Yeah, it's crazy how after that whole week of, you know, really restricting what you eat and having to be really dialed in with your nutrition and then essentially messing up the refuel period. You're
just as dangerous.
Exactly.
So we're going to go into some of the questions and answers. Let's go into a little Q&A session now. We've got about just shy of 20 questions here, I think, from different people on Instagram and people we've met and sort of knew you were coming on the podcast. So if it's cool with you, we're just going to run through some quick fire questions. First of all, what's your favourite dinosaur?
Favourite dinosaur? Velociraptor.
Good shout. Good dinosaur. Solid choice.
That's a question for us. So we're going to start asking every guest that, I think. So we've got a good one here. So diets to maintain good performance in training versus diets for aesthetic reasons, bodybuilders' diet.
That's a good question, actually. Yeah, so it was almost like you said back at the beginning, back in the day when you first started training, looking at bodybuilding.com, and that stuff, I've talked about that quite a bit as well. Yeah. I remember being there myself and just being so confused, like saying...
Flex Lewis.
Yeah, exactly.
Watching Ronnie Coleman videos, thinking it applies to jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai.
And so probably the biggest difference between those two diets would be the performance aspect of it. So obviously bodybuilding is in its own sense a sport, but the performance requirements are so different from combat sports as well, that essentially it's the need for carbs. So you do still need carbs for performance in strength, like weightlifting sports, but not to the extent that you do with combat sports. And so that's why on bodybuilding websites you can see them recommending a low-carb diet to lose weight and get stage ready and stuff like that. And it, you know, through reducing the calories from reducing the carbs, it is an effective diet for weight loss. But if you're a combat sports athlete and you're going low-carb, you're just, you know, you'll be running on fumes and you'll find yourself not able to hit that top gear in training. You know, if you ever have those days, and there's a variety of reasons that can cause this, but probably one of the most common is not consuming enough carbs. It's, you know, you have those days where you feel like, you know, you just can't push that extra bit. You feel like, you know, you've almost got a ceiling on your performance. It's because you haven't got those glycogen stores, you haven't got that energy to push that, you know, last top percent of intensity.
Next one, really good answer, by the way. Next one, best foods to keep your glycogen stores filled after training. So post-training, what's sort of your meal going to consist of?
So yeah, generally be looking to consume carbs in your post-training meal as well as pre-training. So you want to refuel, replenish those stores before your next session.
And again, that's going to be based on the intensity of the training. Like
exactly. Exactly. And so to clarify as well, if your session is, you know, less than 90 minutes or 90 minutes, then your carbs from just consuming normal meals throughout the day will be plenty to fuel that. As long as you're just, you know, having a portion of carbs at each meal, you don't need to worry about specific fueling before or after the session. If you're training twice a day, or if your sessions are longer than an hour and a half, that's when you'd have to start looking at making sure you're getting some carbs in pre-workout and post-workout as well. In terms of some good foods, you know, any sources of carbs really. If you have a short window between training sessions, that's when I would look to consuming slightly higher, faster digesting carbs. So things like honey, maybe like bananas, or maybe like even sports drinks, so dextrose or stuff like that. But for, you know, 90% of people I speak to, you've got, you know, longer than 6 hours between sessions. So just having a normal portion of carbs, so rice, you know, bread, potatoes, and anything like that, really.
And is there any benefit over white rice and brown rice, or brown bread and white bread? It sounds silly, but it's one of the questions someone asked, so we have to ask.
Yeah, definitely. I remember back in the day as well, thinking like, can I not lose weight because of, you know, the differences between white bread versus brown bread? And there are some differences. In terms of actual calories they contain, it's not really a big difference, but the sort of brown whole grain ones contain more fibre, so slightly better for you, slower digesting as well, less refined. So in terms of like satiety and feeling full, providing fibre for your health, the brown version is probably better. But if maximally refueling is your priority, then the white versions would probably be better, because, as I said, fibre slows down your digestion. So having tons of fibre might not allow you to fully
digest it entirely.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And also, if you have like tons of fibre before a training session, you can get that sensation of like bloating in your stomach. So maybe white versions would be better in that case.
Brilliant. So that answer covered that question as well, which is best foods pre and post working. So we've hit that. So best supplements on and under the counter.
Under the counter, does that mean what I think it is?
Yeah, so you spoke about your fish oils and your vitamin D.
Yep.
During training camp, you dial them up and you take other things as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those.
So fish oils and vitamin D would be health-based supplements, so I take them. So vitamin D has some links to like your mental health as well. There's potential, not 100% guaranteed, but some research to say that it can improve your strength and fat loss as well. And obviously, you don't want to be deficient in any vitamins.
And most people are deficient in vitamin D
because
you spend so much time indoors.
Exactly, and we live in England, so you can see the rain on the windows. So I think it's something like 50% of people in the UK are deficient in vitamin D. So that one, fish oils, they're a source of omega-3s, which is a healthy fatty acid, basically, and our diet really doesn't include that much of it. Mm-hmm. If you're eating oily fish, so like salmon or mackerel or something like that, twice or more per week, you probably don't need that. But if you're not, like I'm not a particular fan of those, then fish oil is good because it can reduce your blood pressure, tons of overall health benefits as well as potential benefits for strength and fat loss. So those would be two health-related things that I would recommend taking, most of the time. In terms of performance, so we spoke a little bit about caffeine and creatine before. The other one that comes to mind would be beta-alanine. So I don't know if you guys have heard about that. So it's basically an amino acid, and what it does is so when lactic acid builds up in your muscles, you get that burn, and that's from hydrogen ions. What the beta-alanine does is it buffers them so they don't build up as quickly. So for exercise that's like maybe 2 to 3 minutes, it allows you to go harder for longer, basically. So it delays the building up of that lactic acid in your muscles. So if you're a fighter, a fight round, 3 minutes, something like that.
Throwing heavy shots.
Exactly. So it can improve your sort of short-term endurance, like your power endurance. Yeah. So caffeine, creatine, beta-alanine would be performance supplements. Vitamin D and fish oil would be health supplements. I think that's it.
Anything else? I know a lot of people advise magnesium to try and sleep better at night.
Yeah.
That nature.
I don't normally recommend it just because I don't want my clients to end up spending half their wages on supplements.
That's true. Yeah.
I want to only recommend what I know is guaranteed to have a benefit. If you're someone who's you've got the bases covered with those ones I recommended, and you can afford other things. One website I'd really recommend is examine.com. It's like evidence-based, impartial supplement website. I get a lot of my information from there as well. They're really good. So I'd recommend checking out whatever supplement you're thinking about taking on examine.com. If it's not in those 5, I think, that I just mentioned.
Brilliant. Next one, if he had to live on one food forever, what would it be and why?
Oh, mate, these questions are so good. Yeah, probably brought my teeth away. One food forever, oh man. And I want to live on it as well. So it couldn't be like Biscoff because I'd die after a few weeks.
What you'd be. You'd probably end up smelling of Biscoff within a couple of weeks.
One food, so it'd have to be a food that has some micronutrients, maybe maybe like nuts or something.
Seriously thinking about this.
In terms of being healthy.
I'd have picked Biscoff.
Yeah.
So carry on.
But you only live for a few weeks, but maybe a good few weeks. Maybe I'll go for that one then.
So Biscoff or some form of nuts.
Yeah, it depends if I want to have a good life or a long life.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. Thoughts on fasting. And we sort of spoke about it earlier regarding if you can fast, then by all means do it and keep your calories down. But if it's something that then leads you to overeating, and
yeah, definitely. So that would be the key. What you said there is if it leads you to overeating. And I find as well, don't even label yourself as I can't fast because it leads me to overeat. Because for me personally, and I find with my clients as well, at different stages in your life, it can be different.
Yeah.
You know, like at the moment, personally, I'm enjoying 3 square meals a day, and I don't feel restricted and stuff like that. But there's been periods for me where fasting has worked really well, and it's just like, you know, maybe when I was working and I was busy in the morning, I could just go to lunchtime without being hungry, and then eat the rest of the day. And for me, at that time, that was the right decision. At the moment, I like exercising in the morning, so I don't want to go too long after exercising without eating. So for me at the moment, not fasting is working. But if it works for you, then do it. It's a good tool to reduce calories, and it almost ties into what we were speaking about earlier with like the abstinence versus moderation.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not eating now, and then over these few hours, I'm going to eat. It's like reduces the amount of decisions you have to make, because you're either just in your eating window or in your fasting window.
I intermittent fast every day,
Yeah.
and I feel that gives me the structure I need. I'm not particularly hungry in the mornings anyway. When I get up, I will not. I'll have some water, but I won't have anything. And then eventually, after being up and awake for a couple of hours, I'll have a black coffee. Then I find that a black coffee and just keep sipping on water will get me through without actually feeling hungry. And then it's only sort of once food's past my lips, so to speak, then I'm like, oh shit, now I'm hungry. Now I want to eat.
Yeah, and the key thing is, do you then just eat your 2 normal meals after that, or are you someone who then overeats and feels like you've starved yourself? Because that is what dictates whether it is a good tool or probably not a good tool.
Yeah, and I think one thing to take away from this podcast as well, and you just mentioned it then, is that a lot of these snippets of information are circumstance based.
Yeah.
What are you doing on that day? What are you doing at this time?
How are you feeling?
How have you slept?
Yeah.
So all these things are things to take into account. There's not one rule that works every day.
Unfortunately, with nutrition, the answer is always, it depends.
Yeah, exactly. And like some days you can fast and have one meal a day and almost go home mad, whereas other times you're like, I wake up in the mornings, I'm like, I need some porridge or something. So you have got to base it and just take it day by day basis. And don't take it on the fact that if you don't fast today, it doesn't mean you failed at whatever you're doing that day. Just make sure that the food choices you're having are good food choices.
That's the big thing as well. It's the concept of doing what works for you now is so important, because like you said, if you feel like, oh, I didn't fast today, so I've like messed up my diet, and that it's like, right, I've messed it up today, so I'll just get a takeaway and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
That's the destructive thing. Realise that fasting is just a tool, and if it works for you now, then use that tool. And if it doesn't work for you now, then choose something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't get tied to any one approach.
One method, yeah.
And it's the like unsexy way to say it, because you can't sell, just do what works for you. It's not like you can't sell that really, but it's true. It's what works. Yeah.
Next, eating before bed. Is there like a window of time in which you don't want to eat anything? You don't want to take on any. I got a guy at work that said he started recently having like a spoonful of olive oil just before he goes to bed. I don't know why, but he said for some reason that helps him. And is there anything? Should you have a decent window before you try and get to sleep, or even like food types to avoid, maybe even just before going to bed?
I don't know what his rationale is behind the tablespoon of olive oil.
I don't know.
Well seasoned.
Yeah, maybe.
I think he's read it somewhere and he's like, oh, I'll try that.
Yeah, it's probably similar to like the bulletproof coffee.
Pseudoscience.
Yeah, so I probably wouldn't recommend shoveling oil down your throat. But in terms of, if you're thinking about like fat loss is eating, past X PM, is that going to stop me losing weight? No is the answer. In terms of actually sleep quality, some people find after a meal before bed, you can't sleep very well. It takes you a while to fall asleep. So I wouldn't have a huge meal before bed if that's something that you find disturbs your sleep. But if you can eat before bed and you feel fine, then
again, circumstance dictates.
Yeah.
Exactly, circumstance. Yeah, exactly. So,
but no to the olive oil.
Probably no to the olive oil. I'd like have that with a meal or something, like you can fry some of your food to make it taste nice rather than just eating off the spoon. But yeah,
different.
Yeah,
mate, and you see it all the time with fat bombs in keto. Everyone's trying all these different things, and I get it. I mean, you've got to try it to figure out if it works or if it doesn't. So if you feel better for it, even if it's just what we were saying with CBD and things like that, if it's just
got to try it for a bit and then see if it works for you.
See how you feel. This one, so Ella mate got a question for the next guest if you don't mind. So when they eat carbs, mainly bread, rice, potatoes, sounds like white carbs, I suffer from bad acid reflux, burping a lot, etc. Been to the doctors and they just fob you off with whatever that drug is, and they don't want to take it continuously. Wondered if they could shed any light on what's best to do regarding that.
That's an interesting one. So yeah, like we spoke about GPs a bit earlier, they're definitely under-trained on nutrition advice, so I'd be cautious of getting nutrition advice from a GP generally, or I would also potentially look to a nutritionist as well, or a dietitian. So he said when he eats carbs, he gets acid reflux. That's something I've heard a lot. So I suppose
that could be the copious amounts of alcohol and cocaine that this person
or olive oil.
Yeah, that's the olive oil, mate. Not too sure on that one. I suppose it'd be interesting to see what types of carbs. So if he's having, high fiber like whole grain versions versus like white ones, is it specifically one of them that's causing it?
What time is he having these? The other thing is also go get your bloods done. Maybe there is something wrong. Maybe you've got a stomach ulcer. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
But it may be something a lot more insidious than just.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a little out of my scope in terms of.
I agree.
Being able to offer life-changing advice on that one, potentially.
Well, we had a training partner that was having the same thing. It turned out he had a hernia.
Really? Yeah. So maybe do go to your GP and get them to
sort out your hernia.
Get some blood tests or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to be one for you, in all honesty, but we have to ask.
So it's worth asking.
Diabetes. So that's a big one. That changes a lot of the goalposts in regards to what you can take on, because you're always having to monitor your blood sugars and things like that. So firstly, diabetes and muscle gain. I know a lack of insulin or too much insulin or anything can sort of change your ability to work out, gain muscle. There's actually, in the bodybuilding world, people will literally buy insulin to lose weight. So if you've got any advice for maybe someone who's just starting off, is it trial and error? Is it obviously take it very slowly?
Go to the scientist.
But I know there's successful bodybuilders, but I don't know of many like combat sport athletes that are real diabetic. Off the top of my head, I can't.
Well, then they might be, and they just don't make it public knowledge.
Potentially. Yeah, that's another tough question actually. So
again, that sort of GP realm, isn't it?
Yeah, potentially GP. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. That's the sort of thing that, because it's not an area I normally work on people with, it's an area I have that was covered in MNU, but you remember what you work with so often, so I'd have to probably revisit my lectures to
I'll tell you what we do with that question, and we'll stay in touch with you. If and when you come across that, or you want to re-go over it, give it to us, and we'll pass that information on to the person who asked the question. Looking to lose fat without losing weight and losing muscle. So is there? That's sort of
something you cake and eat, isn't it?
Yeah. Is there a way to lose fat specific without losing actual pounds on the scale and without losing muscle? So
I want to clarify the difference between weight and muscle. So you can lose fat without losing muscle 100%. You really can't lose, or the chances of losing fat without losing any weight are low. But this is actually something I come across quite a lot, and people will message me saying, I want to lose fat without losing any weight. And they just sort of imagine themselves
gaining muscle as the fat goes back, so it's like meeting in the middle.
But I think at the root of it is because they feel like when they're losing weight, that is them losing muscle. So you can 100% lose fat without losing muscle. And if you retain the exact same amount of muscle you have, but you lose fat, you will lose weight, but you will look a lot better, and you won't look smaller, and you won't look like you've lost muscles, because that's what people fear. I find when they say, I want to lose fat but I don't want to lose weight, they fear looking smaller.
That's what personally for me, whenever I've gone on like a diet, so to speak, I want to shed a few pounds, I always think I look worse than when I'm before, really. Like I lean out here, so like my abdomen and my midriff is a lot tighter, but also I feel like my arms are shrunk up, my face has got more gaunt and things like that. So it's finding a diet that sort of works for that, really.
And so for that, the three things I would recommend looking at, and actually the I suppose the fear of losing muscle when dieting is like quite overblown. Although a lot of people fear it, you can fairly like easily or simply at least like mitigate against it, so you don't lose muscle. And one would be just keeping a high protein intake, right? So if I'm putting a number out there, 2 grams per kilo that you weigh. So if you're 70 kilos, aim for 140 grams of protein in the day, and spread that evenly as well. So don't just have that all in like one sitting. Spread that, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, spread that through maybe like 4, maybe 5 servings throughout the day. So you're getting enough protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, so retaining and building new muscle tissue, and minimize muscle protein breakdown, which is essentially the main goal, which is when your body is breaking down muscle for
weight
energy. So that's number 1, enough protein throughout the day. Number 2 would be resistance training, so lifting weights basically. So that provides the stimulus for your body to build muscle basically and retain the muscle. So if you've got the protein in adequate amounts and you've got the resistance training, then you don't need to worry about losing muscle when you're dieting. The other thing I would look to is sleep as well, because that can have such a negative impact on other areas of your life as well as your training quality and stuff like that. So if you've got those first 2 ones nailed, also look to sleep as well. If you're doing those first 2, but you're sleeping 5 hours a night, then you might be losing some muscle. Protein, lifting weights, and sleep.
And is there a golden number regarding calorie deficit wise to be losing fat? Is there one that sticks out to you that you would advise on a weekly basis or a daily basis? This calorie deficit will help you lose fat.
Yeah, so I would say if you, and this especially applies if you're very lean already. So if you don't have any fat to lose, maybe if you're like 10% body fat or lower, which a lot of people with this goal would probably be higher than that, but just for those who are, that's when you'd want to be going slower with the calorie deficit because you've got less fat to lose, and so the chance of your body using muscle to provide the energy is higher. If you're higher than that, like most people would be, like I said earlier, 500 calories a day, 3,500 a week, that can lead to about half a kilo per week. That's a good amount. Without worrying about having to lose any muscle or anything like that. So around that, maybe slightly higher. Good
advice. Next one. If you had to stop at a standard fuel station and grab some lunch, not M&S. What are you getting?
That's a good answer though in the story as well. Before. Yeah, I like that they've clarified, not M&S.
Well, M&S has got far too superior selection.
Yeah.
So let's talk about
that's top tier.
Let's talk about Shell or Sainsbury's. What are you getting?
Shell garage, right? So I suppose it comes back to earlier what we were talking about with the basing your meals around the protein source and so the vegetables or the fruits, so a source of micronutrients. They also keep you full as well. So I'm assuming this is like for a weight loss goal or something like that. So looking to get a source of protein. So this could be, a yogurt, Greek yogurt pot, and then some micronutrients. That could be some fruit as well. So that's something you'll typically find in a gas station, right? So like just some natural plain yogurt and some fruit, easy one. Put them together. Other things like in the more savoury realm, so you can often find like pre-chopped, pre-mixed salad bags. So pairing them with a protein source as well. So you might be able to find in some of the higher end garages maybe some like pre-cooked chicken or another pre-cooked meat or source of protein, and you can sort of mix those 2 together. Again, you'd be getting the protein from the meat and the micronutrients from the vegetables. Other things as well is that sandwiches could be a decent choice. And like the whole thing of saying, oh, I had a sandwich, like they can differ massively. If you're having like an all-day breakfast on white bread, probably not the best choice. But if you something like maybe tuna and cucumber, tuna and mayo sandwich on like wholemeal bread, that could be a decent choice. Or maybe chicken salad sandwich on wholemeal bread. So be looking to sort of wholer bread, brown bread, and then leaner sources of protein. So not things like bacon. Things more like chicken or tuna or stuff like that. So you can have them as well. Maybe also with some salad or vegetables or carrot sticks that you could find in there. I reckon those are good.
I've noticed that a lot of meal, the classic Tesco meal deal. There are healthy options in there now. Yeah. It used to be like you're saying, all day breakfast, pack of quavers and a fizzy drink, whereas now there are like low calorie options.
Yeah, exactly. So for a meal deal, getting like one of those sandwiches I mentioned, plus. You can often get the bags of popcorn now, sort of lower calorie popcorn.
And then they do little fruit bags now.
Little fruit, that'd be even better. And then just like a low calorie drink, so water, ideally, something like that.
Good stuff.
Would be a good choice.
What we got next? So, top 3 items to keep in stock at home. We addressed that earlier, #Lime. Quick and healthy meal ideas for someone who works long hours and doesn't like to cook.
This is a good one actually, because from my experience with fighters, they don't like to cook.
I hate cooking. Despise it.
It's got to be quick and easy. So generally thinking about the components for a meal, so I like to break it down into, you've got your protein sources, carbs, fats, and then you've got your veggies. So what you want to do is find some easy, quick sources for each of those. So, what comes to top of mind easily for fat is things like oils. So you can use like olive oil or something like that, really high in monounsaturated fats, really healthy fat to cook in. And then, you've got to pour it out and chuck it in the pan. So
Not just do a scoop before bed.
Don't have it before bed, maybe. And then, so for carbs, things like, I'm a big fan of, like Uncle Ben's rice or like the microwave rice, things like that. They're a super easy one. Whack them in the microwave and they're done, and they taste nice as well.
And do you have a whole bag of Uncle Ben's rice?
I wouldn't personally. I'm, 57 kilos. I'm a small guy. So probably for me, it would be half a pack, or maybe one pack, depending on how many meals a day I'm having. So I would say, just for the general listener, as a bit of advice, if you're, a bigger guy, maybe 75 kilos plus, then a full pack would be a serving. If you're probably below 75 kilos, then maybe half a pack, or a full pack if you don't snack too much throughout the day, or if, you're maybe pre or post workout and those carbs are more important. But yeah, don't automatically assume that a full pack would be a serving. So you got some,
because it's easy to assume when you go into and you sort right, okay, microwave 2 minutes, and then you put the whole thing on your plate. It makes sense to do that, but
definitely,
guidelines wise, it's not there.
And then so quick veggies are things like stir fried veggies, which are great. Frozen, like chopped mixed veg, just easy. You can put it in a Tupperware, whack it in the microwave, and it cooks in a few minutes. So things like that are ideal. And then protein sources as well. So generally, I'm a fan of eggs. Are quite easy to cook. Don't take too much effort. If even that's too much, you can buy pre-cooked chicken, pre-cooked chopped chicken. And if you so thinking about an actual meal that you can make out of it. So you get a pan, tablespoon of olive oil, chuck the veggies in, chuck the protein in, so have some pre-cooked chicken or something like that. Maybe add a bit of the seasoning we spoke about earlier, so limes, chili, garlic maybe. And then you can serve that with the Uncle Ben's rice, and that's a meal. So what I would do is think of a few meals like that. For me personally, a stir fry, porridge for breakfast is super easy, and then just like a salad, so a pre-made salad bag, maybe a tin of tuna, tablespoon of olive oil, bit of balsamic vinegar or something. 3 super easy meals. Lime, of course, every meal. Just maybe get 3 to 5 meals that are quick and easy, and you can always always have the stuff in. Just rotate between those. That's right.
Again, good advice. Keeping focused on a diet. Now, rather than answer that, go back and watch his YouTube video.
Yes.
It's an amazing video. I think it's 18 minutes long.
There's an 18 minutes full version, and I've clipped a 3-minute version which just goes over the first one. So if you're not sold, watch that first one and then
watch the 18-minute one. Trust me, really, really good content for staying on track. Rather than spending 20 minutes now rehashing over something you've already put out there.
Yeah.
Honestly, go on to James's new your YouTube channel, and it's a really, really good video. So I've watched it and took loads away from it. Macro percentage ratios for fat loss, i.e. 40% carbs, 20% fats, etc., etc.
It's a good question, and one I get quite commonly as well. People,
it's my question.
People like that as well. And I remember actually going back to my uni days, I was talking, experimenting with different diets and stuff. I was trying to find the ideal macro percentage. And even talking about getting caught up in the fads, got caught up in the body type thing, endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph, which now I know isn't evidence based. So if anyone is listening and feels like because you're an endomorph you can't eat carbs or whatever,
that's bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit, and that's how I was. So and coming back to the question in terms of macro ratios for fat loss, it's not, the ratios will differ depending on what. How many calories you're on, and so I wouldn't be looking to ratios. I've spoken about it quite a lot over the course of this podcast. I'd be looking more to grams per kilo of body weight. So in terms of just some valuable advice for fighters, what I'd be looking at, so protein to be getting roughly 2 grams per kilo. Carbs will depend on your training level, like how intense your training is that day. If it's a rest day, 2 grams per kilo, so 2 times your weight of carbs would be fine. If you're training harder, maybe you'd be looking higher, so maybe 4, 5, grams, maybe even higher grams per kilo. So that would just depend on your training intensity. Fats on a training day, 0.5 to 1 gram per kilo. So if I'm 60 kilos, 30 to 60 grams. And then on a rest day, going a bit higher to make it up. So 1 to 2 grams per kilo on a rest day. Yeah, so that's it. Protein, carbs, and fats. So that makes sense. So I'd be looking towards those rather than percentages, because if I'm on a calorie deficit, I wouldn't still have that same percentage of maybe 20% protein or whatever, because I'd like to keep the protein the same, because you're reducing the overall calories. Keeping the protein the same would mean that the percentage goes up. So look to those grams per kilo.
Sick. Well, that's the Q&A portion done. So regarding the podcast, that's been some fantastic information. You're now going off on your travel. So talk to us about that. The reason we have to get you on the podcast is because shortly after Christmas and New Year, you're off to Thailand.
Yeah, I almost don't want to talk about it because it's been delayed so long that I feel like I'm jinxing it. Yeah, but so I was meant to move to Thailand in May this year. Obviously, COVID hit, so by that time I quit my job and everything, and then basically COVID hit, caused this big shitstorm. And so I've just been waiting for them to open up their borders, and now I'm in the process where I've got my visa, I've got my flights and quarantine hotel and all booked. There's a lot of hoops you've got to jump through. But for me, because I planned to move there and my girlfriend is out there as well, it just makes sense for me to do that. So I'm heading out there early in January, and then I'll be doing a 2-week hotel quarantine. Basically, you're stuck in your hotel room.
Did you pick a nice hotel?
I picked a mediocre hotel.
Okay.
I had to balance the price of the
You don't want 2 weeks of bed bugs and shit food.
Exactly. So fingers crossed for that one. I've got a balcony, so hopefully I'll be able to get out on that. But hopefully it ties in well. January you've got all the people with their New Year's resolution wanting to get their nutrition sorted. So I'll have basically 24 hours inside a day that I'll be able to work with people. So.
Yeah, and hopefully this podcast will assist and people go to your website, sign up. I know you're not taking on too many clients. One of the things that I actually respect about the way you run your business is that you're not overloading clients. You don't just accept everyone on board. Is that you have a manageable amount of clients, so you can actually focus on them and give them the help they need.
I like to keep the list small, and then I know that I can give everyone the attention they deserve and that they're paying for. Without overloading myself and then starting to have to sacrifice my own fight training and stuff like that. So I like to keep it
everything in moderation, including moderation.
Exactly.
So what's your goals? Your reason for going to Thailand? What are you looking to gain out of it? You've got a 90-day visa, and I know, like you said, if you could stay longer, you'd be staying longer. We'll see what happens. But what are you looking to achieve out there?
So looking to ultimately the big picture is to stay out there long term, take my Muay Thai career as far as I can get it, fight as much as possible, fight at least once every month, just get as many fights under my belt as I can, as much experience, take on, the toughest competition that's available to me, and, maybe one day get to the elite level of the sport. Ultimately, that's the goal. So
it's James Nichol versus Yodson Clyde 2021.
Yeah.
In front of the king of Ireland.
Yeah, hopefully you'll retire before. But yeah, essentially take Muay Thai as far as I can, get to, we were saying at the start with these extreme personalities, I never want to do anything and half-arse it. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to move to Thailand, I'm going to commit to it, I'm going to get to as high a level as I physically can, rather than, not giving it 100%.
Yeah. A lot of respect for that.
Thank you.
And the thing is that if you don't do that, you'll only be left with regrets at the end of it anyway.
It's the
maybe
whole
I could have
thing. Yeah. Never want to be one of those guys in the pub saying, "Oh yeah, I used to do that when I was younger. I could have been a world champ if I didn't get injured."
Every bricklayer in London could have been a world champion boxer.
I blew my ACL and that was the end of that.
Exactly.
No, fair play. So, we'll stop the podcast there. But best of luck.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much for coming on. We'll stay in touch with you. Maybe we can do, I know we said you prefer doing it in person, but maybe we'll do a couple of video podcasts while you're out there.
Flights to Thailand.
I did say.
All expenses paid.
Yeah.
I'll be back in the UK at some point, so it'd be great to come back on. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
I did say James made the 2.5 hour trip down there, so it's only fair we make the 9 hour flight out there this time.
I've been to Thailand, be good to go.
So thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
Be sure to look up James on Instagram, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Genuinely, even your posts on Instagram, they're brilliant, really informative, and really well put together. Give us a like, subscribe, and a follow. We'll be back with you again in a couple of weeks. All right.
Awesome.
Cheers. Thanks again, James.
Thank you.
First and foremost, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Asylum podcast. We're in association with Gym Buddy. Gym Buddy is a fitness network created to streamline the interaction between gyms and gym users. Whether you're a gym looking for a new revenue stream or a prospective gym rat looking to get in shape, Gym Buddy provides the platform to do so. They strive to deliver an experience that will support users both mentally and physically to become the best version of themselves. Download the Gym Buddy app today.
We are also brought to you by Plant the Seed. Plant the Seed are a family-run business based in West Sussex, providing high-quality, 100% organic CBD products. A company passionate about CBD and fully invested into providing you a product you can trust. Their researched range of full-spectrum CBD oils are made from Swiss-grown hemp and 100% organic sunflower oil. All their oils are 100% certified and extracted using CO2 extraction methods. All products are third-party lab tested, ensuring each drop contains the cannabinoid you need for a healthy, happy you.
Lastly, we're also sponsored by Fit Stuff. Their product range is tailored to suit the modern day individual who wants to be able to improve their body and health no matter what.
Gone are the days of busy gyms waiting in line for equipment or worrying about what other members are thinking or doing.
At Fit Stuff, they understand the importance of being fit and healthy, but they want to make your journey to the new improved you as easy as possible. Thanks again for listening. Be sure to sign into our Instagram, our Facebook, interact with us, follow us, subscribe on YouTube, and we'll talk to you again very soon.